Hey folks, it's Derek from ForeGolf Custom here. Now, after 30 plus years at custom fitting, working on different companies, different products all the time, something new coming along, it's not often something blows up and something that gets me genuinely interested. It's also probably something that I have been waiting for over the past couple of years, because with the transition of different materials and different kind of techniques in manufacturing, this is kind of the one I've been waiting for. But it had to come in the right kind of framework. Today, I'm looking at the McLaren Irons, the new Series 1 and Series 3 irons from McLaren Golf. Yes, you've heard it right. McLaren, as in the Formula 1 racing team, have gone literally rogue and set up a golf division. So what does that mean? Well, there's two irons in this range. Basically, there's a Series 1 and a Series 3. The Series 1 basically is that player profiled, player performance, player feel with really strong elements of forgiveness. So how do we define forgiveness in a player's product? Well, it's the balance and the way that the club is constructed internally that creates the forgiveness in terms of the strike. It's also how the management of off-center hits works within the actual framework of the club. So Series 1 is designed for that, I guess, better player, but it's probably more for that golfer that wants a cleaner look, that wants something more neater profiled, wants something a bit more kind of clean lines, smaller frame, smaller sole, and thinner top line. It's the iron that Justin Rose currently has in play. But it just means that you can have this level of forgiveness with that player side that hasn't really been there before. I'm going to delve into it in a minute, give you a little bit more detail how that's done. But then Series 3 is kind of the more cavitied version. So I guess for the more mid to higher handicapper, somebody that wants ultimate in forgiveness. And when I say ultimate in forgiveness, I really mean that. And this is something that's bandied around all the time in terms of iron design. Oh, it's forgiving. Oh, it's very easy to hit. Oh, it's for the higher handicapper. But it's not often that that ultimately delivers along with distance control and exceptional feel. A higher handicapper iron, it usually feels like that. It feels a bit tinny. It feels a bit kind of fast off the face, which are good things. And if that's something that you're looking for, this may not be for you. But the Series 3 iron has exceptional feel through the strike, which is very unusual. It feels like a forged club, even though it's not. And then it has this kind of balance in it, let's call it. Okay, so it's how they've structured or moved the weight around the head that's given it the ultimate in sort of control. Very, very easy to strike and very easy to actually work through the set of irons and not worry too much about your centered or perfect strikes. So it's for that more mid to high handicapper. So they've kind of covered both ends of the spectrum kind of thing. And then you can also have it maybe in between if you have a guy that or a girl that wants to have a club that's kind of player profile but has the forgiveness, or a ultimate forgiveness that has the feel or more player sensation. I think they've done a great job here. Right, so Series 1 iron, what am I doing with this in terms of fitting? Well, obviously it's for that slightly, I guess, better player, but not necessarily. I'm seeing this in kind of more low into the mid handicappers as well, because they like the shape of it. But remember, this thing has really good forgiveness across the face. But what I'm doing a lot of shafts in this is obviously a little heavier. So I'm using more Nippon Modus 120 if I want a little bit more feel, a little bit more flight in the ball, a little bit more sensation of strike through impact. I'm also using Dynamic Gold S3, funny enough, and a little bit of X1 for that golfer that wants it a little heavier, a little bit more stable. It's also a great rifle product, so that Project X in the 6.0, 6.5. I'm also using a little bit of graphite, but only when I'm trying to create a little bit more sensation or feel, and I want a little bit more flight in the ball. I'm actually using KBS's TGI 80. That's a really handy shaft for me to use if I want to get that weight strip, but I want to get lots of club head feel, and I want a little bit more flight in the ball, but it still has that sort of sense of stability. To be honest, with this kind of head, I'm usually thinking about a quieter impact position. I'm thinking about how can I deliver that club head a little bit quicker and easier to the ball, because usually there's a bit of speed there involved. So if I'm trying to stop that club from rolling over, I'm using a slightly stiffer tip. So I'm using that Project X 6.0s, I'm using Dynamic Gold in there. I've also got a bit of KBS Tour that's worked really well in this, because again, KBS Tour, a little like Modus, has a little bit more flow in it. So it generates better feel without losing the stability. So don't use a lot of regular flexes in these. I'm tending to keep them more stiffer. And then because the weighting is so specific, my swing weight is exact based on the club head. They have a couple of different weights for me, so I can work that swing weight in there. It's perfect for that kind of player profile, I guess, application. In Series 3, it's a lot lighter. I'm keeping it light because I want it fast. I want it moving through the ball quickly. I'm using a little bit of Tour 90 lights. I'm using from KBS. I'm using Nippon as well in the 850s. A little bit more steel fiber as well. The I-95 is great in this club head. Stable, fast, light, quick. And also, I try not to use regular flex too much, or too much whippy shafts, unless the speed and the transition is really slow. So with transition, I mean if the swing is quite sort of languid and slow, it's not quite quick from the top, then I'm bringing flex in to try and generate a little bit more energy. But generally speaking, try and keep the flex. Here's a bit of a top tip for you. Keep the flex a little stiffer if you're going to go lighter. So if you're going to go to Nippon 850s, for instance, keep it a little firmer. 950s, keep it a little firmer. You won't actually feel it that much stiffer because the shaft is lighter. That I-95 from steel fiber, great shaft for this, stable, strong, keep it in the stiff. There's a little bit of Acra as well. I'm using that lighter weight Acra if I have to generate a little bit more head feel, but I don't want to lose that stability. But general rule is, if you're going for Series 3, keep the shaft lighter, keep it a little bit more stable, make sure that you feel like you can hit it and not lose that sensation or feel of the club head, and then make sure you get the length of this club just right for you based on your strike point. Don't just think because I'm taller, I'm an inch longer. Don't do that. You need this camber and sole to work the way that it's been designed. You also need to use that weighting position where it's been placed to help with that strike. So getting that dialed in for the exact length based on your strike profile, really important. But if you're worried about forgiveness, don't. This thing has it in bucket loads. Nice and soft, feels great, flies forever, and is really stable. So just be careful about the shaft, and then make sure that if you're going to go for wider grips, you're making sure that you're balancing the club accordingly. It's all about keeping this thing consistent and organized. But I'm wondering, why have McLaren gone for something like this? Like, why have they sort of said, well, look, let's move into this kind of golf side of things? Well, for me, the excitement comes from the fact that this is, questioning design. Is tradition the way that things can move forward? Is using traditional methods of construction? Is using traditional methods of steel application? Is using traditional methods of perimeter weighting? Is that the way to move forward? So they're questioning everything to do with tradition, which I think is the way to move forward. I'm also really impressed that everything is design-led, right? So they don't think about, here's the club design, how do we then move stuff around and make it a bit better? They go, let's work from design side or R&D first, and then let's then push it into the design that they're using, which leads to their manufacturing. They're using an MIM, so a metal injection type molding process. It's the first time it's ever been done in terms of irons. Well, what does that mean for the golfer? Well, I'll tell you what it means for me. As the technician and the club maker, MIM means tighter tolerances. So that means that when they inject that metal formula in there, it makes the final product very consistent and tolerant for weights, very consistent and tolerant for where the weight is, and then from a design perspective, way more on point. So you don't have to be adding weight to the heel to try and get your swing weight to organize. You don't have to try and, build the set differently when the heads arrive in. They come in on point. So that means from a consistency perspective and from an engineering perspective, it actually meets the numbers that it's posted on the website. And this is really important, because companies will post detail on the website in relation to loft and lie and weight and balance and swing weight, but at the bottom they'll say these are just measurements that they use for design. They're not necessarily followed through for manufacturing. In this case, they are. So this technically will be the most consistent set of clubs that you will ever find in terms of build. And that's very different. It's not saying, well, here's our design and it's really cool and we love it, and then you go to produce it and it doesn't follow through. This is where they've gone in reverse. And everything is engineering led, which is very unusual in golf, because usually it's marketing led. How much can we sell? How many we can sell? What's the number? This has gone, no, that goes to one side. We're going to go from design first, and then can we push it into this type of a design, into this kind of a golf club? And questions are asked, which is phenomenal. I've never seen it in a golf industry where they're questioning, does the shaft have to be round? Why does the weight have to be there? Why can't we put it somewhere else? Why can't we use this material to make it do this? And why can't we do? It's questioning current head design. And that's what makes it unique. And that's why I think it has sticking power. Okay, Series 1. Let's get a little deeper into this. So Series 1 is that player profile product, right? So if I take that club head, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the back off it so that I can figure out what's going to happen in behind the strike. And this is where you'll see tungsten weighting in weird shapings. It kind of goes in almost like a kind of extended S. To be honest, it probably pulls from the racing line. It looks like a chicane, right? But what it's doing is it's pushing tungsten across the club head. And then it's positioning it in different weights in different heads. So basically throughout the set, the tungsten weighting changes anywhere from kind of, 8 up to 16 grams, depending. And what it will do is it will stretch the control of the club or the forgiveness of the club across the face. They then have a silicone piece in behind there that helps with that dampening effect. The guys in McLaren wanted this thing to sound perfect. And in fairness, that's what they do, right? They go to the nth degree. How can we make the car faster? How can we make it more streamlined? How do we improve on last week? How do we go faster, right? That's their thinking. So they wanted to have, how do we make this thing feel like a forged club, but it's not a forged club? How do we make it perform better than a forged club, and it's not a forged club? How do we use this metal and how do we use this tungsten to make it better? And they've done a phenomenal job. The thing sounds like the softest metal you'll ever strike, and yet it has phenomenal distance capabilities fused with the consistency of those numbers through the actual different heads. That tungsten then does that job in terms of moving peripheral weight across. They then use a kind of an unusual sole, and this comes from a guy called J.P. Harrington. Why is J.P. Harrington important? Because this is the guy that Titleist had tipped to be the next Bob Vocchi. They actually employed the guy. He makes phenomenal wedges. And when we say phenomenal wedges, what does that mean? Well, he's an expert in CG location, and he's an expert in camber and design of the sole of the wedge. So this guy's come in to help design the irons. So that means he's thinking, how do we make the sole of the club way better than it's ever been? And he's thinking, how do we then make design move CG or center of gravity across the face or into places where it creates better balance? They then have made this sole, this cambered sole, which is perfect. It's designed to be perfect at soil interaction. So with the ground, how does the club head want to work through the ground? And it is phenomenal. It's done a brilliant job because they've thought about it. They've not just taken traditional sole and say, that'll do, bang it in there, it's the way it's always been. They've gone, no, let's do it different. Let's make this better. Then they've used this mesh steel, component at the back of the club, and that meshing is quite important because what it's done is it's stripped out weight where it's not needed, so they can then move CG, or JP can help move CG with the design team into places where it creates better balance, better control, better organized strike. So these factors in design mean that the club plays like a player's club, feels as soft as butter, and performs and is as forgiving as a more forgiving club. It's like the perfect design in terms of club head trilogy. Control, feel, performance. It's phenomenal. And I think that they're onto something whereby their train of thought now means that they're moving towards making it better. So this is just Series 1, right? This is going to obviously expand to other products. Has to. But I believe the thinking behind it means that it's going to move in the right direction. That's what I'm saying. Right, Series 3, where does that come in? Hey, what they've done here is then they've taken away that kind of player profile because they know it's not going to work if you just kind of use that player profile and then strip a bit more weight around. What they've done is no, we're going to have to make it more peripheral weighted. We're going to have to move weight into places to make it more balanced, to make it more forgiving on off-center strikes. But what they've done is they've kind of used, a different kind of design. Where they've done is they've got they're calling it a bonnet, right? I'm just saying it's a carbon fiber crown that goes over the back that they can hide the weight into. There's a tungsten weight that sits behind the bonnet, and what that does is it helps to centralize CG location and keep it low and deep in the iron, because this club head has a lot more peripheral weighting around it, and that tungsten then helps to kind of keep things organized. It's between 10 and 17 grams. And that weight changes depending on the size of the head as they move through the set. So the 3 iron obviously slightly smaller, the wedge slightly bigger, means that you can customize that weight. Not for me, but for the design team, so they can get the whole thing to balance correctly. Then there's the tungsten weight in the toe. Now this tungsten weight in the toe is really important because what it's doing is the weight that's been stripped out of the club is allowed to go somewhere else. And the design team have gone, well, hey, if we put that out on the toe, well, that makes that thing way more stable. Whereas if we just didn't have anything there and just left the weight where it was, would it do as good a job? No, it wouldn't. Moving the weight to the toe helps to control the off-center strike and the movement of the club head. So it helps to stabilize the club. That weight in the toe is really important. And that weight moves between 3 and 16 grams, again, depending on the club head. So this is really unusual because normally you just hear that there's a weight in there. But actually, we now know that there's different weights depending on the sole, the piece in the sole and the piece in the toe. So all the time they're thinking about balancing the club perfectly. And again, the design team are back to this whole premise that if it needs to be perfect, make it perfect. Why would we just lamp a weight in there and hope that it does its job and sure it'll be grand? No, let's be specific about what weight goes where so that it helps to balance the club perfectly through the set of irons. It makes it the perfect set of clubs. Finally then, it's got that cambered sole that JP's come up with, and that camber in that sole is more forgiving in that Series 3 head. Because it's cambered in a certain way, it means that it's more forgiving on strike. It means that it leans into the strike better and allows the club to move through the shot better. And that makes sense because one of the things, obviously, with the control for that slightly higher handicap or mid-handicapper, it means that the club's sole is actually thinking about how do I move through the sole? How do I make this easier on the golfer? Again, thinking, changing the traditional look, and then using an industry expert like JP to come up with the solution and then say to the design team, hey, if we do this, it'll do that, it'll do the other. They go, perfect, let's put it in, done, and it does produce the results. Lastly, the micro mesh. So again, micro mesh in the Series 3 means that the weighting can be positioned in places where it makes more sense. Why would you have weight there when you can move it somewhere else? Strip the weight out where it's not needed, put it into places where it can. That Series 3 is exceptionally forgiving. I mean, exceptionally. I've seen other testing done. We've tested it here. You don't have to hit a perfect shot to get a perfect result. It's amazing. And in the long irons, it's exceptional. It's so well balanced and controlled that it doesn't need exceptional strikes to produce really good, solid distance results. Very consistent in terms of speed as well. It holds the speed retention across the face, which is quite unusual for peripheral weighted. Again, well designed equals great results. Look, I think this is going somewhere. And I think that there's going to be more coming, obviously, because they've just done 2 irons. There has to be something else. I think it's going to move into wedges next. And our friend JP Harrington is definitely going to be involved in this bad boy. This is his golden spot. That's his wheelhouse. When it comes to wedges, he's the guy. Look him up on social and you will see. I can't wait to see how the Woods driver and hybrid come through because again, they've brought in some industry experts from other brands who are really smart people, but what they're doing is they're pulling then in the R&D team from McLaren to go, what materials can we use? How can we make this better? Again, questioning traditional usage. This is not going to be something that's out there. This is going to be something totally new. That's why I'm so excited. Right as of this video right now, we are currently we are the only custom fitters for this product in Ireland. Now, that could change, but what they've done is they've also been very strategic in who they've chosen to work with, who they've decided, look, who are we going to partner with that's going to give this thing not only the best experience, but obviously the best application for golfers. Because it's no point just lamping this into everybody. It's not going to work like that. It has to be moved and positioned to suit the golfer. It has to be positioned to suit the situation. It has to be positioned to suit what scenario you're looking for a flight. Is it for everybody? Probably not. But will it do its job when pushed and planted in the right position or right golfer scenario? Absolutely. And it's because there's been time taken in design. There's been time taken in production. There's been time taken in materials. It's like the perfect application for people like me because I know that the club can back up everything that it's not only said it was going to do, but also everything that it's going to do for the golfer in terms of that fitting. There are a multitude of shafts. There's a multitude of ways for us to fit this, and it's going to be one of the best fitters. In fact, the fitting kit that we received, wow, probably one of the best I've ever seen, which says a lot after 30 years. As I said, it's kind of hard to get me impressed, and I'm kind of impressed with the way that they've done this. It's starting to look like it's a really solid way. So, hey, if you want to get fitted for that product, you can book in on our website. Come along and see what McLaren Golf and McLaren Series 1 and Series 3 irons can do for you. Hope that's helped. Hope to see you at the next video. Thanks for watching.